Now moving on to the Healthy Aging Tour stages 2 and 3. Stage 2 was the individual time trial, 14.5 kilometers from Lauwersug to Lauwersug. What an unusual name. In the north of Holland, the weather was apparently biblical. Like, the wind was absurd, and it wasn't safe to ride the TT at the projected start time, which is actually normally a good time for me, 9 p.m. In the evening where I am. But it got pushed back to like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock local time, and just didn't work for us time zones because that's 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning for me. And the wind was still really strong when they did it. They all had to race it on road bikes, which is pretty terrifying. 14K, absolutely pancake flat course. And contenders for the stage were Lisa Klein, Brennauer, Peters, Norsgaard, Ellen van Dijk, of course. And, I mean, I'll do it how we normally do TTs, Benji. Ellen van Dijk won, time of 20:53, average speed of 41:37, 26 seconds out of Peters. Ellen Dijk on Trek Segafredo, Peters on SD Works. 2 Dutch women, Lisa Brennauer third for Sarah Tizit, 30 seconds back. Emma Norsgaard showing, I thought she might get a top 3, but it's 4th, still good, 36 seconds back. Lisa Klein 5th. Just Jocelyn Loudon, Benji, for Drops Le Col, 43 seconds back. I think she's the rider that set the unofficial hour record in that controversial British cycling pre-Olympics testing. No, seriously, but
Yeah.
I've got to fact check that. But I think the commentary with was it McCrossan said that today. I think he and Danny Rowe are very, very good on the women's races. But Alice Barnes, 7th, 20 Becky for Jumbo-Visma women, a minute 2 back. Anna Henderson 9th, and Daniek Hengeveld, who came 8th yesterday and that on stage 1 after that break, 10th. So Ellen van Dijk striking out in the TT. Anything surprise you about that, Benji? Norsgaard, obviously, is she, like, are you surprised by her being that far up there with Van Dijk, Peters, and Brennauer?
I think Norsgaard is starting to be one of the breakthroughs of the season, certainly. And she's showing every single race that she rides now that she's very, very strong. And she also was already decent at time trial, but she confounded once again. I think Ellen van Dijk was the ungodly favorite pretty much for this entire tour, knowing that she's won it 3 times in a row beforehand. And this is the 4th time that she was in a position already after stage 1 to potentially take it home in the end if she did well on the 2nd and 3rd stage, the 2nd being a time trial. So it fits her to the bone. And what was special about this time trial too for me is that the earliest riders had so much wind, and the wind started dropping towards a time where the likes of a Norsgaard and a Van Dijk had to ride. So the initial riders perhaps had a bit of a serious bad luck, I'd say, when it comes to the weather difference, kind of like the first men's Giro stage of last year, very similar in the same sense that the weather changed throughout the race. And I do not think that it changed the winner here, because Van Dijk was just dominant above the rest. She does what she does best on this terrain. We were looking at the likes of a Brennauer perhaps at a Barnes to try and protect her placing in GC. Dora, I didn't really believe in personally. I don't think she's a great TTR, and I think she lost 2 minutes indeed in the end.
Yeah.
So not a good time trial, but also not really expected to have a good time trial. I think this time trial just had the winner that was written down for it. We tried to go for some outsiders once we tried predicting the stage a few days ago. I think you actually said you could see Norsgaard winning this. So she came very close in the time trial as well. She proved once again she's up there. And yeah, that's basically it. I think Brennauer was top 3 as well. Let me check to be sure, because I'm just going off the top of my head right now.
She was.
Yes, she was 2nd. So that was a top 3 for certain.
So going into stage 3, the GC, Ellen van Dijk leading, 23 seconds ahead of Amy Peters. So a bit of unusual territory for SD Works, not being leaders going into in any race, really. Lisa Brennauer 3rd on 25, Norsgaard 4th on 33, Klein 5th on 39. Other SD Works riders, Majerus, Luxembourg national champ at 1 minute 17, as well as Caroline Canwell at 1:48 and Lonica Uniken at 1:59. This stage 3 parkour from, is it Vista or Weista, Benji? How do you say it?
Weister. Try that again.
Weister.
Yes.
Weister.
And what's
Okay,
special
and
about this
it's
parkour?
on top of the waist dump. So
Yes.
Weister makes sense. What is the history of this special course, Benji?
It's a bit of a funny story, actually, because, the Netherlands, it's a pretty flat country. Not too many hills in it, no climbs. It's very difficult for someone like a Tom Dumoulin or a Kruiswijk or even a Kelderman to become Dutch national champion on the road. Van der Poel, yeah, he has a bit of a combination there with sprinting and hilling, so he can do both, really. Usually it was always, or relatively always, a either sprinty or relatively hilly parkour, and that brought forward the likes of a Groenewegen or Jacobsen winning those races, and Sinkeldam once, but let's not think about that moment anymore. Anyway, they had to create something to make sure the climbers could also have an opportunity. They decided to see, oh, there's a waist dump, let's make a hill out of it. And that's how the Vamberg was created. And the Vamberg, which is how they pronounce it, is the climb we do 17 times, or the women did 17 times in this stage, which is crazy. It's not the steepest or the biggest climb, but if you do it 17 times, it's gonna hurt. And that's really the key to this entire story. It's a very difficult race because of the consecutive climbing round circuits you get. 400 meters of
And there's cobbles.
5.8%. There's a bit of cobbles on it. I can't tell you if it's like very difficult cobbles or anything. I generally
Apparently they're
can't tell
quite
you.
nasty.
Yeah?
Yeah, apparently. Apparently they're like nastier than the actual cobbles that are normally in the area.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I
They're
mean,
not
you're
a
the
flop.
cobble expert though.
Yeah, I haven't went to analyze on site yet, so I can't tell you the quality of cobbles that they have in the Netherlands. But the Flemish cobbles are obviously much better. I can tell you that with full confidence. Anyway, today's stage would be a bit of a war of attrition. I was expecting, really. So a lot of perhaps one women army attacks at certain points to try and blow stuff up. And I think we saw that throughout the entire race, right? Because like it wasn't really that you had the breakaway, then everybody gets caught, and then on the last hill they attack. It's war throughout.
When live coverage started, there was a group of 30 and a break of 4. Everyone was like perished. It was like the nastiest race ever. And I said to Benji, I'm like, the title of this needs to be not the healthy aging tour, it's the unhealthy will age you tour. Because it was
Fucking
like
terrible joke.
-3 degrees. Go and look at their Twitter. Go and look at the finish line photos and stuff. Fuck me. Like it's gotta be so cold, rainy. If any of y'all think I'm moving to the Netherlands or Belgium when I move to Europe, you're out of your goddamn mind. But anyway, when we joined live coverage, there's about 46 k's to go. There was a bunch, 45 riders, a minute behind the breakaway. The breakaway was 5 riders, Jolien Dor and Lonneke Uneken, who both have SD Works. They were both like 2 minutes behind on GC, so they put in their like quote unquote weaker GC threats, SD Works, into the break. Anna Henderson of Jumbo Visma, Loretta Hansen for Trek Segafredo, and Emma Norsgaard for Movistar. They had a gap of like 47 seconds. And pretty weird, Benji, because Loretta Hansen in the break, but Ellen Van Dyke in the leader's jersey on Trek having to pace back to that break.
Yeah, not ideal, is it? Because usually you've got the situation where you try and encircle your leader with as many teammates as possible so that she can keep the gap under control to the front of the race, but you're basically spending energy. And I think the idea behind it could be that they're saying, oh, let's put her in a seat behind, but that's not really how you race as a leader, I would expect. So, yeah, a bit of a weird situation. Perhaps she got into that by accident, and they wanted to keep both the GC and the stage win on the table as potential stuff to happen. But I still think it's weird. I think they could have played it more defensively. And if it did anything or not, we'll see at the end of our little exploratory story here. But I think that group, yeah, Like
They
we
got
said
brought
it.
back, I think, or a
Yeah.
few of them got dropped out of it. 25 Ks to go. They had like a 23-second lead. I think Carol and Canuel had bridged across as well to that group. So still two SD Works riders. Julian Dor was like dropping every climb, every ascent more and more, and then she eventually dropped out of that group. SD Works not happy with, I guess they just want to put more pressure on Ellen Van Dyke. So they attacked with Mazurus, who was also like a minute 17 back on GC. So they like held her back because she was not as far back on GC. Then she attacked with Lisa Brennell, German, on Theratizit. They were like 23 seconds back. And then it was Lonika Uniken who went clear of the breakaway, the young Dutch rider on SD Works. Apparently there's a little bit of hype about her. She had a minute 16 on the bunch with 18 Ks to go. And eventually Ellen Van Dyke tried to bridge across to Brennauer. Who was the Canyon SRAM rider, Benji, who kept trying to bridge solo? I can't,
Lisa
anyway, the
Klein.
Canyon SRAM rider. Pardon?
Lisa Klein.
Yeah, I think she cost herself today, working too much solo. Um, she could have followed more moves, and she tried to do it all herself when, if she's a bit more patient, SD Works and inevitably would have done it for her. So 8 chases with Ellen Van Dyke, Peters, Brennauer, Klein, I think as well, maybe Barnes as well. 116 gap. And then this is where it started to get really, really exciting. Lonika Uniken's clear, 2 minutes back on GC. Ellen Van Dyke has no teammates, and SD Works were at the front. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And the time gap was going down. So it looked like they were chasing their own teammate. But when you looked at what
Yeah.
they were doing, they were barely pedaling. So, like, at what point did you realize the time gaps were lying to us?
I think I don't know how many kilometers to go, but they came into just before the final lap. And this means that you're basically just before the ascension to the Vanberg, because that's the end of each lap. And they go on to this section where it's like a bit of an 8, a sideways 8, an infinity symbol, the road, the parkour. And while the group and the person that was trying to bridge, I think it was Lisa Klein at that moment, was starting the entire 8 symbol to the right, so she had to go the entire way around to then go down again and then go to the left. We already saw that at the finish line, she was already passing Lonneke Uniken. And we saw when that group started that symbol, the infinity symbol. It's very difficult to understand. Okay, I know it's not my easiest explanation, but basically we saw at that point that while they were doing the right section, she was already doing the left section, which means that it must have been more than a minute and a half. And then suddenly, boom, the time gap showed up when they crossed the finish line. And why did it show up there? Because that's where they really calculated the seconds between the groups on this terrain. They don't have the best budget in this race, and that is the way they decided to do it for most of the situation, it seems. And that is where they knew for clear that the gap between the two groups, between Lonneke Uniken, Lisa Klein, was 2 minutes 31, which means there was another half a minute to the actual group behind Lisa Klein, which is 3 minutes. And at that point, you're starting to think, oh boy, Ellen Van Dijk, this is a very difficult moment for you, because now you're virtually losing your lead in GC to Lonneke Uniken at the start of the race. So she had to crawl back from that point onwards. And I think that's also the moment, and we started deteriorating or seeing deterioration in what Lonneke Uniken was doing at the front of the race. Every single time the road went up from that point, she started having trouble.
That was the problem. So both SD Works riders, the rider Uniken in the lead was getting more tired, understandably. She'd already been in the breakaway before
Yeah.
at like 45 Ks to go. But Amy Peters, who was 23 seconds back on Ellen Van Dyke, who was, quote unquote, supposed to be getting a free ride, whilst Lisa Klein, Brennauer, and Van Dyke had to pace, she was also dropping a little bit every ascent of the Col du Vam. And yeah, we eventually saw. We knew it was going to be a really close run thing because it got brought back to 2 minutes with 6Ks to go. I think there's bonus seconds on the line for the stage winner. We knew obviously that Uniken, unless she fell off her bike, was going to win the stage. It was just whether she could win by a minute 49 or more. And I think she got caught in the crossfire a little bit because Norsgaard Benji started to pace pretty
Yeah,
hard as well as Brennauer. I think they were kind of attacking each other on GC, to be honest, and Norsgaard was trying to move up on general classification. And eventually Uniken crossed. So Uniken like crawls across the line. We've seen at the back Peters. I was like, oh well, Uniken's probably not going to win GC if it keeps going this way. Surely the plan is for Peters to attack, but she couldn't. Like so, yeah, that was that was the main problem in the Floor and the SD Works plan. That was pretty good one. Norsgaard then surges really hard up to the last ascent with Brennauer on her wheel, drops Van Dyke, Klein, Peters, and yeah, she comes second on the stage, a minute 14 back with Brennauer on her wheel, and then we're waiting for the clock to tick, and it's ticking, 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 and eventually Ellen Van Dyke holds on, finishing a minute 29 back on Lonneke Uniken, holding it, even though she'd been dropped and isolated, she was able to just limit her losses and hold on to GC. I couldn't believe it. Van Dyke 6 seconds ahead of Brennauer and 12 seconds ahead of Norsgaard third. Uniken 20 seconds back in fourth. Yeah, what an exciting finish, Benji. One of the most exciting women's races I've seen recently, and it didn't have some of the big names here.
yeah, I think that is the beauty of cycling for me as well. We see for one of the first times, we don't see this often, the continental races, or we call it continental races, but the sub World Tour races, the ones that are not in the World Tour classification, those are the ones where sometimes the best racing is formed because you don't know who is the all out favorite. Let's look at Tirreno Adriatico with the men's edition now. You know for each of the first three stages which of the who are the top four in the stage. And that's something you don't have in this situation because it can come from so many different places. And you can have a youngster that overperforms in a very, very beautiful way. Like we had today, Lonneke Uniken. She's 21 and she's showing our colors that she can do this stuff in the future. As D-Works has a valuable, valuable rider in that. And it's also her first victory, if I recall correctly, her first pro win. So definitely, yeah, definitely showing off, I'd say, and definitely showing that she deserves that spot in the team, which is a very, very loaded team already. So that's great stuff. And we also see the likes of a Danique Hengeveld a few days ago, I think yesterday in the time trial as well with the top 10 placing. She also performed very well on the first two stages. She died out on the third one, but can't blame her. She's super young, showed herself. She's going to get a proper contract, I think, very, very soon. I think that we're going to see from these kind of races talent grow up and talent move into World Tour. And I love that. And I wish that perhaps the World Tour circuit with the women's races was a bit bigger, that there were more teams in there. The likes of Ayambo deserves that spot, in my opinion. I think that there's quite a number of a few Conti teams that would deserve a spot in the World Tour circuit, I'd say. But it's probably more of a financial question than anything UCI wise.
And yeah, we really wanted to cover this race, even though we only cover normally World Tour or Women's World Tour races. We obviously didn't cover the Samin or La Guelia or GP Industria or Kerner, but we had a lot of the World Tour teams here, and it's one of the only women's stage races on for quite a
Yeah,
while, and it was super
exactly.
exciting. Yeah,
I think that one of the reasons that we want to cover it that much is because there's so limited coverage of women's cycling that this is just something that we can do. And this is gonna sound stupid, but
and we could watch it.
yeah, certainly that's the most important part here. Otherwise, we would have a difficulty explaining what happened, really. So yeah, that would have been awkward. But the first stage of Tirreno, I think it was the fourth or third stage of Paris-Nice was on that day, and it was also the first stage of Healthy Aging Tour. And somehow I was more hyped about the Healthy Aging Tour than the first stage of Tirreno and that Paris-Nice stage on the day, which is heresy for a lot of people. But it's just because
Yeah, I mean that's a
sometimes
bit too far. The Paris ITT, the Tirreno stage, I grant you, but Paris ITT, come on. But yeah, I take your point. Like I was pretty excited for today's stage in particular. I couldn't wait to see this because I didn't catch the Netherlands National Championship last year, even though the result looks predictable. Alan van Dijk taking out a fourth GC at this race, but certainly this if you want to catch an hour of racing that is really exciting, because Paris and Tirreno, you can probably catch the finales, but if you want to catch the last hour of racing, a full hour of exciting, really tough attritional racing, then Healthy Aging Tour Stage 3 it's a pretty good one. I think it's on Eurosport GCN or Podium TV or wherever. I don't know. You'll figure it out wherever you are in the world. But that's our recap today of Healthy Aging Tour Stage 3 and the GC, as well as Pyrenees Stage 6 and Tirreno Adriatico Stage 3. We'll be back tomorrow with a recap of just the two men's races that are on Saturday. And yeah, that's all. I'm pretty buckled, Benji. It's now 3:15 in the morning. I'm going to get to sleep. And sweet dreams for Ilnur Zakarin winning tomorrow. Ciao.